All right, I can see that we are now streaming live on Facebook, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Damon McCool. I'm the Specialist of Research and Public Programming here at Eastern State Penitentiary. Welcome to Searchlight. We have a great program for you this evening, but before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about Eastern State and what we do. So Eastern State Penitentiary was built in 1829 on a cherry orchard just outside of Philadelphia. It's probably best known for its architecture, which is radial in design and resembles the spokes of a wheel. When Eastern State opened, it was founded on one idea, and that was that rehabilitation for people in prison was only possible through strict solitary confinement. And that idea was tested on tens of thousands of men, women, and children for over 80 years until 1913, when Eastern State abandoned solitary confinement in favor of a more congregate setting. The penitentiary closed in 1971 and sat abandoned for a number of years. Today, Eastern State is a stabilized ruin, historic site, and museum. We're dedicated to interpreting the history of American criminal justice reform. And in order to do that, we've got the big graph on the prison's baseball field. The big graph does a couple of things. One of the sides shows the US rate of incarceration over time. The side that we can see here shows the US rate of incarceration compared to every other nation on earth. And the third side shows the shameful racial disparities in our criminal justice system. That is that people of color are disproportionately overrepresented in our prison system. The big graph has a partner exhibit. It's called Prisons Today, Questions in the Age of Mass Incarceration, where visitors are encouraged to consider their relationship to the criminal justice system. If you'd like to learn more about Eastern State or are interested in connecting to our mission on a deeper level, you should consider becoming a member. Members get access to all kinds of special things, including unique programming like Member Saturday. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit us at easternstate.org/membership. There's lots of ways to stay connected to Eastern State. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also visit us at easternstate.org. Also, be sure to tune in to Searchlight next month. That'll be on Tuesday, August 3rd, right here at 6 p.m. We'll be talking about women-owned fair chance businesses and women in reentry. You won't want to miss it. So that's Tuesday, August 3rd, 6 p.m. right here. And tonight, we're going to be confronting the registry. We're going to talk about the history and consequences of U.S. sex offense laws. We have some amazing panelists with us this evening. Terrence Chisholm is a father of two, a gospel musician and a professional drummer, community volunteer, and the president of the Chicago 400 Alliance, the grassroots legislative campaign to support the Chicago 400. Terrence runs leadership meetings and presents to organizational partners such as victims advocates, fair housing advocates, reentry service providers, police accountability activists, and lawmakers. Chicago 400 Alliance members are always delighted when he drums for them on Zoom meetings. Terrence, thank you so much for being here. Stephen Diggs is a father, a grandfather, a recovering addict, and a recovery support specialist at Above and Beyond Recovery Center in Chicago, where he serves as a mentor, a teacher, and the facilitator for WRAP, which stands for Wellness Recovery Action Plan. Stephen is the Sergeant at Arms of the Chicago 400 Alliance, and his valuable skills are essential to this campaign centered on compassion and accountability. Stephen is an advocate for the people and encourages all of us to leverage our combined power to help one another. Stephen, thank you so much for being here. David L. Garlock is a successful returning citizen, reentry professional, and criminal justice reform advocate. David and his brother received 25-year sentences in Alabama after taking the life of their abuser. A client of Equal Justice Initiative, he was released on parole in 2013 after serving more than 13 years and pursuing several educational opportunities while incarcerated. He subsequently obtained his bachelor's degree from Eastern University and is the Pennsylvania State Organizer for Straight Ahead Org, a new grassroots organization that is working to abolish life without parole sentences. He is also on the board of directors of the National Association for Rational Sex Offense Laws, working to abolish the sex offense registry. David, thank you so much for being here. Emily Horowitz is a professor of sociology and criminal justice at St. Francis College in Brooklyn, New York. She is the author of a number of articles about the harms of sex offense registries, including the book, Protecting Our Kids, How Sex Offender Laws Are Failing Us. At St. Francis College, she co-directs a program that helps those with criminal justice involvement earn college degrees, and she is currently conducting research on the experiences of veterans with sex offense convictions. Emily, thank you for being here. Lori Jo Reynolds is an artist and policy advocate who has spent 2 decades challenging the demonization, warehousing, and social exclusion of people in the criminal legal system. He was the organizer of TAMS Year 10, the grassroots campaign to close the notorious Illinois State Supermax prison, shuttered by Governor Pat Quinn in 2013. Reynolds currently collaborates on a research and organizing project with Chicagoans who have been made homeless by statewide housing banishment laws. She is an associate professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago and the coordinator of the Chicago 400 Alliance. Lori Jo, thank you for being here. And last but not least, Willie Trent is an activist on the registry working towards restorative justice and reform of Sex Offender Registration Act laws. He is a member of the Education from the Inside Out Coalition, the Prison Reentry Program, and is presently pursuing a bachelor's degree in criminology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Willie, thank you so much for being here. So,
Thank you.
I want to jump right in here. And Emily, what are sex offense registries and why were they created?
Okay, so sex offense registries originally emerged after a few high-profile stranger abductions of children, children who were, put on milk cartons. There's a few famous names that we heard about in the late 80s, such as Eitan Pates and Megan Kenka and Jacob Wetterling. And these extraordinarily rare crimes really set off a moral panic. There were registries that were in California where gay men were listed and they were used to list gay men on registries. That's how they were first used. But after these stranger abductions, this idea emerged in the culture that we need to monitor people who have sex offense convictions after they're released from prison. And it's kind of interesting because these cases, not only were they very rare, but it's not even clear if the individuals responsible had prior sex offense convictions. They actually emerged because some parents, after their children went missing, had this idea like, well, maybe if the police had a list of people who had sex offense convictions, we'd be able to find the perpetrators. But quickly it morphed into this monster where people are publicly listed on registries. And in fact, in the early 90s, there was no internet, right? So it was going to be like a 1-800 number, very different than it is today. And somehow today, since 1996, we've had registries in all 50 states, and we have almost 1 million people listed on these registries. And so we all kind of know that we can very easily type in our address and see who in our community has a sex offense conviction. So I know the first question that you're going to ask me is like, what's wrong with the premise of sex offense registry? So I'd really rather get to that, since I think we all kind of know what they are because they're so pervasive and they receive such widespread support. But the problem with registries is that almost every single child who's harmed, victimized sexually, is harmed by someone they know, not by a stranger, not by somebody on the registry. So the registries, the very premise is completely flawed. There's many children who are victims of all kinds of physical abuse. Most children who are harmed physically and neglected, not sexually. Sexual abuse is a very small percentage of harm to children. But in any case, almost all children who are harmed in any way are harmed by people they know. Between 93 and 95% of children are harmed by non-strangers. So the registry, the very premise is absurd. And the other reason why these registries are absurd is that almost all sex offenses are committed by people who don't have a prior sex offense conviction. So even though we have this idea that people who commit sex offenses inevitably do it again, that their rates of recidivism are frightening and high, this is a myth. So if you look at those two numbers, you can see these registries are completely useless. They're just a form of vengeance. They're not about justice. They're about banishment and punishment and humiliation.
Oh, that was perfect. That was really thorough. Thank you so much for that, Emily. I want to pivot to our friends in Chicago. Terrence, you are the president of the Chicago 400 Alliance. Can you tell us who are the Chicago 400 and what experiences have they had?
Thank you. I'm Terrence. I'm the president of the Chicago 400. The Chicago 400 is a group of Black men and Black women who is experienced homelessness due to lifetime registration that forbids us from being homeless and have to register once a week. Um, some for life or some for 10 years. Um, what we go through is, like I stated, we have to register at the police station, as you can see in this picture of some of the members of the Chicago Farms just standing in line waiting to see a police officer to register. Um, the effect it has on us, one, it forbids us to have housing, which some of us was in housing, but due to these laws that's in place, we were forced to be out of housing. Two, it causes people to not be able to live normal lives like we should be due to the fact that we have to register. Some of us have kids, babies that we take care of. But as you can see now, it's a crisis that we are battling and try to get attained so that we can live a normal life. I must say it's difficult. I've been dealing with it for 17 years now. I mean, I'm age 38 now, so you can do the math and see like that's a long time for a person to not have housing. Um, the Chicago 400 organized ourselves. We organized this group ourselves. Um, everything we do to help the Chicago 400 and others who are dealing with this long time crisis. So we just asking people to really take this thing seriously. None of us was asked to be in this situation, but we paid our dues to society, and we just asking for to be humans again, because we have lives like other people have lives, and we don't want to be looked at as creatures or animals, but we want to be looked at as African American people. Because if you say Black Lives Matter, then why doesn't our life matter when we already faced the time that we did, and we wanted to be able to get back to society, get back to having a decent job to support our families. But due to these laws, it's affecting us to do that, especially not having housing and having to register once a week just to sign a piece of paper saying where you stayed at overnight. There's a bullpen with people standing in a long line. As you can see, that's a paper on that Lojo that's passed that we have to sign stating where we at 7 days a week. Um, and it's useless. We be in at the police station for numerous of hours. We can't lie to them, telling them, well, I have to work or I have a kid that has to go to school. It's either you register or you go to jail. So there's no way around it. If you have a job or you have little kids that you have to take care of or have to explain to them why mom or dad can't take them to school because we have to see the police. This is our livelihood that we are going against with these laws and policies that's in here. In closing, we are asking people to help us on our Twitter page. We do have a Twitter page. It's the Chicago 400. You can look up there and we have more information. to follow us. And I'm grateful and thankful for your time and having me on. I'm Terrence. I'm the Chicago 400 president, and it was a pleasure and honor to be able to talk to you and explain what the Chicago 400 is. God bless you.
Awesome. Terrence, thank you so much for that. Stephen, who else is in the Chicago 400 Alliance, and what's the mission of the organization? What are the goals of the Chicago 400? Oh, I can't hear you.
Hello, thank you. My name is Stephen Diggs. Again, I am a certified recovery specialist, but I'm also an alcohol and drug counselor. I just got my certification. So, but when you said who is affected, who's my alliance? So, like we have the victim rights advocates. We have the Above and Beyond Recovery Center. We have the Chicago Alliance of Races and Politics. We have the Kobe House Jail Ministry. We have the Legal Counsel Health Justice. We have the John Howard Association, Illinois. We have the Safer Foundation. We have the Institute for Public Safety and Social Justice at Allen University. And we have the Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation and the Cyber Center on Poverty Laws. So those are, and Above and Beyond is where I work at, the recovery center where I work at. And our goal is to kind of educate the public and educate the people about the registry and the effect that it has on our lives that prevent us from living a normal life. I am a father, I am a husband, I am a grandfather, I am also an advocate. I work in recovery every day, and I see the effect that I have on my family, but I see the effect they have on other people's family, because I have people in my job that come to me that's on the registry, and I have to explain to them, I have to share about my life and say, hey, it's something that needs to be done. Our goal is to end housing management or to reduce the housing management and to just end the registry. As Terrence said earlier, we have to get a job and to go to school and to get my certification and to become an advocate and to be able to help people. Our goal is just to educate people in this thing called registry. So yeah, that's about it.
Thanks so much, Stephen. If we have time later, I want to ask you another question about your work as a recovery specialist, but we'll get there in a minute. Hey, Lori Jo, you've been working on this campaign for several years. It sounds like a very unique campaign, both in terms of what you're advocating for and how the campaign is organized. What makes this campaign unique, and what strategies have you all used to advance your goals?
Well, what makes this campaign unique is the amazing Chicago 400 members that you've met and that you saw images of people organizing. But for people who are experiencing homelessness on registries to organize themselves and kind of get all of the rest of us to support them is just truly phenomenal. And they're such amazing, like courageous, true leaders in the world, really. I mean, I've never been part of or seen a campaign like this. It's amazing. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I don't think I can bring up the slide because now my computer's not working, but I'll maybe show it to you later, is that we also work on the issue of all the registries. In Illinois, we have 47% of people in Illinois have some conviction or arrest record. And so far, a lot of what Illinois lawmakers have done is, they have the sex offense registry, then they passed the murder registry, violent crimes against youth, arson registry, we have a gun registry, methamphetamine manufacturing registry. So we're seeing this tendency to just start having these registries. And what are registries? Well, Emily's already described them, but a public conviction registry really is just a list of people on the internet with a past conviction, which has absolutely no role in helping people, improving people's lives, supporting, ending the pathways that led to any of those convictions to begin with. All it does is make it more difficult for people to get jobs. And in our state, makes it very difficult for people to get housing. And so in our state, if you're homeless on any of those registries, you actually have to register weekly at the police. It turns out most of the people in the Chicago 400 were made homeless by housing banishment laws, which are laws that after punishment, after conviction, after punishment is completely finished, ban people from living in Illinois anyway, in most housing in the entire state. It kind of maps it out and blocks it out. And so we're a campaign that is really focused on housing banishment in particular and weekly registration. And I'll just say one more thing about that. I mean, it's incredible because the damage caused by housing banishment is literally that Stephen is homeless, that Terrence is homeless, that hundreds of guys and women are homeless. And we have 1,000 or more people backed up in the Department of Corrections every single year who can't get out, even though they've got housing to live in, because we've made their housing illegal. So they stay past their out dates in prison. And that's like, you know, a prison full of people, hundreds of people homeless in Chicago alone. It's one of the most acute criminal justice problems that could be solved so easily. And yet, who is working on it? The people who have been made homeless are the ones working on it here in our state. You know, other people aren't working on this issue. So I could say more, and if we have time, I will. But they also, the Chicago 400 did an incredible art show at the Drawing Center last year in New York that Emily helped us organize a symposium, and Willie was there. So that's enough.
That was really concise. Thank you so much. I definitely want to make space for you to unpack some more of that towards the end of our conversation, but I want to pivot to Willie. Willie, hello. You are a student at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City and an activist. Can you tell us how someone's status as a registrant can jeopardize their ability to get an education, and what work is being done to remove those barriers?
Yes. Good evening, Damon, and everybody from the Eastern Institute, the panelists. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be invited to speak on the panel. Thank you very much. So those that's, I'm in New York State. So typically the process for someone attempting to elect and enroll in a higher education in New York State would be, you would have to submit a 5-page essay, and you would have to detail your criminal history in the essay. It would have to go to the Dean of Admission. The Dean of Admission would then review it. And along with that, you would have to submit your rap sheet, a current rap sheet, along with character references showing that you've been rehabilitated. So you have to have letters from parole officers, probation officers, caseworkers, social workers, basically detailing how you meet the criteria of being reformed or rehabilitated and presently pose no threat to the safety of the campus or the students. Since that, you know, we've had the Ban the Box initiative, which has been phenomenal. It's been worldwide. It was successful because prop number 10 on the college application stated, have you ever been convicted of a felony? So on the college application number 10, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Once you check yes, that automatically brings you under the purview of the college, the Dean of Admission, the safety, and the overall faculty in terms of safety, where you would now have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you pose no risk to the campus. From my experience, typically the first time I was denied several times. The common answer is very vague. Usually we just choose not to go forward with your application at this time. Please reapply or resubmit your application in fall of next year. You know, you would be free to appeal, but by the time the appeal process likely comes through, you'll be on the next semester anyway. So you could reapply for that upcoming semester. So after banning the box, which was a success, they no longer have on the college applications, have you ever been convicted of a felony, which is very good. However, they do have another dragnet for individuals who are on the registry. The dragnet now is the selective service application. So the selective service application basically says that anybody who lives in the United States have to apply for draft services. So being that if you have some kind of criminal history, you likely did not apply for draft services, that upholds or withholds you from being able to access financial aid. So you now would have to get the letter from selective services stating why you did not certify for selective services. That in turn opens you up for questions by the college, which again still allows them to reintroduce your history for those that have sexual offenses on their record or whatever. So that's still a dragnet for those who have sex offender histories. although it's no longer on the college application, have you been convicted of a felony? The selective services aspect of the college admission process still ensnares those who are on the registry. Another big component of those on the registry is the actual intern process. Intern and externships, preferably for those in social work, they tend to favor more level ones. So if you have a level 2 or level 3 in terms of registry conviction, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually find intern or externships in agencies. The common reason that the agencies use is that they have to protect their staff, their faculty, and their facility, and their shareholders. So individuals that seeking to pursue a degree or post-education will definitely have to be mindful of that. And lastly, if you are admitted into the college, there's usually several mandates they give you. One, you're not able to access certain floors. So if they have a daycare, childcare, anywhere in the facility, that particular aspect of the building will be off limits. There's certain entrances that you're not able to access or egress in the facility because they're in close proximity to daycare or childcare. And then lastly, you will be periodically have to meet, usually after every semester, with the dean of admission, the board of trustees, to basically see what your status is. Are you, I guess, in the same state, or are you displaying any signs that may be concerning to the faculty or the actual college or the campus? So those restrictions are very difficult for an individual who may not have the verbal dexterity to deal with the interview, who may lack a verbal proficiency in terms of writing to be able to do the essay, and just the shame factor alone, just basically reliving the whole fact and the circumstances that led to your conviction, although it may be 20 years old, 10 years old, you basically have to relive that each and every time you choose to enroll in a college or university. So those are some of the present barriers that may deter or be dissuasive to individuals on the registry seeking education. As far as the students, they've been very open to the conversation for the most part. Many of them have been very surprised to actually come to terms and realize that they actually have individuals on the registry who may be in their class. I guess it's kind of like a us versus them. Very few students actually figured that somebody on the registry would be in college, which was very surprising. They kind of think like, if you're on a registry, more than likely you're in prison, or you're wandering under a bridge, or you're out and about, but you're definitely not seeking a post-education, so that's been very interesting to be able to engage and have discourse in the various institutions.
Thanks so much for that.
That's that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, you've described yourself as an unlikely advocate for people on the registry. So as an unlikely advocate, why do you support the abolition of registries?
Oh, the reason I support the abolition of registries goes along with what Emily was talking about, the fact that 95% of the people that are committing sexual offenses right now aren't on the registry. My brother and I, we were sexually and physically abused for 8 years, and the registry couldn't have prevented this. A lot of people ask, they're like, how can you work to abolish this registry? It's going to protect all these children. I'm like, no, it doesn't. And I mean, really getting into this work, I didn't, when I graduated college, I didn't say, okay, hey, let me get in this work and help abolish the registry and work with people who have committed sexual offenses. But it's just something that happened, and the doors open. And once I started working with the men at New Person Ministries, and just seeing these men that were coming out of prison, and having conversations with them. I mean, the work I was doing, I looked at restorative justice, because a lot of these men would never have an opportunity to talk to the person that they had harmed. But here they are. I was able to be the victim by proxy, and I was able to help them heal. And a lot of these individuals had been sexually abused themselves, and this is something that society doesn't pay attention to. Some stats is from 35 to 75% of this population have been abused themselves, and so it's important that we have these conversations, that we have these dialogues, and that's why I love going to universities, and talk to criminal justice students, because a lot of the times they don't have specific parts in their criminal justice classes where they're talking about the registry, where they're talking about people who have committed sexual offenses. So here I am, I'm able to go in and educate them and challenge them to have a different perspective and a different view on these men and these women, and not look at them as monsters or sex offenders, but to look at them as somebody who's committed a sexual offense and as a human being.
Thanks for that, David. I want to jump into the Q&A real quick and ask a question. And David, I'm hoping you can unpack it for us. The question is, have people on the registry only committed crimes against children? And once someone is registered, are they always on the registry? David, you answered this in the chat. Can you unpack that for us here?
Yeah, so that's another one of these myths that everybody has. When there's articles or people say the term sex offender, everybody thinks that, okay, this is somebody that has molested a child. But if you look at it, only 25% of the people on the registry have offenses against children. And even a percentage of those were children when they committed these offenses. We're the only country in the world that will put children on a registry. I remember, when I was a kid playing doctor, and today that's what's happening. These kids that are experimenting, they're being put on the registry, and sometimes they're being put on the registry for life for something that they did while they were 11, 12, 13. The other day I think it was in New York, a 6-year-old was being charged with rape. It's like, how in the world can you charge a 6-year-old with rape? But now when we think about the terms of the registry, it's each state is different. Like where I am in Pennsylvania, you have 3 tiers. You have tier 1, and you have to register for 15 years, tier 2 for 25 years, and tier 3 and SVP, which is considered sexually violent predators, those are individuals that have to register for a lifetime. And so each state has their own guidelines. Hearing about what the folks there from the Chicago 400 have saying, everybody there is typically on, I think, 10 years, you said, or a lifetime. So that's the thing, there's no cohesion with any state. It's all, each state makes up their own laws, and then you have places like Florida that's constantly adding more laws after more laws after more laws to make it even harder for these individuals to live. That's why you have the homeless encampments that remind me of the leper colonies in India.
David, many Americans have a strong opinion about the issue of registries, mainly in support of them, as Emily points out in her book. I wanted to ask you, what's being done to change attitudes around this topic?
One of the main things is what we're doing right now. How many times would you think of some place like Eastern State Penitentiary would get together these activists that are working to abolish the sexual offender registry and have a conversation? That's the thing. People like Willie and Steven, Terrence, Dr. Horowitz, Lori, myself, we're having conversations. We're going in and we're exposing the myths. We're talking to people about this thing that everybody's scared of, the registry, and really showing it what it's really about. And these students are baffled when I tell them the recidivism rates for people who've committed sexual offenses. When I talk to these students, anywhere from 60 to 80% of the students believe that that's the recidivism rate. But when I tell them that it's 1.5 to 5.5% that these individuals will commit another sexual offense, their eyes get huge and they're like, wait, what? You're telling me that is the likelihood that they're going to reoffend? I'm like, yes, but that's what we have to do. We have to change the narrative, And one thing I always do is, I ask everybody in the classroom, I ask everybody how many of them have ever stolen anything in their life. And when they raise a hand, I go around and I start calling them a thief. And they give me these crazy looks like, wait, why are you calling me a thief? I'm like, that's the same way if you call me a murderer or a convict or a felon, or if you call these individuals on this registry a sex offender. And I'm like, okay, they're not the label, whatever offense they committed could have been, as Terrence said, his was 17 years ago. Should he still be labeled by that thing he did 17 years ago? No, he's a human being. That's why I have this shirt on. I am a human. I'm not my past. I'm not anything that. I'm what I am today. and what I do tomorrow. That's what defines me. And that's really what we have to do. And that's how we change the attitudes, and being proximate, coming in, having these tough conversations and challenging the beliefs that people have about people who have committed sexual offenses.
Thanks for that, David. Emily, David talked a little bit about this, but I was wondering if you could kind of unpack the numbers here. We're told that these laws are designed to protect children, but a large percentage of people on the registry either are children or were put on the registry as children. Can you tell us a little more about the data behind that?
Yeah, so number one, there a certain percentage of people on the registry were put there as children. It's hard to know the exact percent because the data is a mess, but there was a whole report by Human Rights Watch about the realities and experiences of juveniles who were put on the registry. So it's obviously, not solely about protecting children if you put children on these terrible lists. Number two, there's people on these registries who do not have who offended, had cases involving adult victims. So, that's another issue. Many people on these registries had, child quote unquote victims, but they were in cases like Romeo and Juliet cases where there's less than a 4-year difference between the victim and the perpetrator. But I think what's really important to point out is that registries are after you go to prison, after parole. So we already have this really draconian criminal justice apparatus in place. People are punished. Registries are after you're already punished. After parole is a tripwire, as I'm sure everybody here who's experienced parole can tell you. If you can get off parole, that's a huge accomplishment. So these registries are just completely useless. There's no data that shows they make anyone safer. They're just destructive, stupid, pointless, excessive punishment that cause homelessness. In Florida, in some cities in Florida, such as Miami, there's nowhere people on the registry can live. So there was this case that many of you know about where people who had sex offenses were living under a bridge. In California, the parole department got rid of residency restrictions because they couldn't keep track of people who had sex offense convictions because there was so much homelessness. And everything we know, I'm a criminologist, everything we know about rehabilitation, you want people after they complete prison to have jobs, to have housing, to be able to go to school. When I met Willie just wanted to go to college. He didn't want anything else. He just wanted to go to college and he couldn't get into any college because they said, you have a conviction. So everything we know about helping people after they have a conviction is undermined by the registry, putting their pictures up on the internet, putting their home addresses up. It's ludicrous and it's brutal and it's terrible and it doesn't help anybody.
Thanks for that. Willie, you have expressed interest in kind of finding more data-driven solutions to some of these challenges. So rather than a registry, what might be a more data-driven approach for reentry for folks who have these types of convictions?
Well, as Emily just echoed, I want to re-echo. We have tons of data. It's not that the data is being utilized, so we don't need more factoids. We don't need more data. We need the dollars to actually go behind the people. We know that people who have stable housing, who have employment, who have stable relationships do not return back to recidivism. So if a person does not have a house and they're ostracized to the fringes of society, living under a bridge, that's creating a dangerous environment, because, when people don't have their basic necessities, like hierarchy of needs, like Maslow described, people tend to revert to basic survival. In this case, it could be stealing a piece of bread or stealing a slice of pizza, and so when the legitimate roads are barred, then the illegitimate roads become viable options, so we need to put the money behind the people. Everybody's can change, there's a beauty in every beast, so we don't have to say the murderer is redeemable, but the registrant is not, the drug dealer is, the rapist isn't. We have to get away from all of that. People are people. The person made an error. They paid their dues. They paid their debt to society. Now society should aid and assist that individual becoming a law-abiding citizen and a functional member of society. So,
thanks for that, Willie. Stephen, I want to circle back to your work with folks in recovery. Can you tell us how registries and addiction overlap? So in your work, do you see, for example, people struggling with both? I can't hear you.
This Zoom thing. So yes, I was just listening to David, and it's exactly what's happening at my job. People that's on the register, people in this have addiction. So when you can't find housing, when you can't get a job because you have this label, quote unquote label on you, it tends to make them go out and to get high and to do drugs. And it kind of makes the addiction worse because they see that nothing's going right for them. They don't have people that's going to give them a job, but that's going to give them housing because of the housing management. And I see this every day, and I'm one of those people. I was listening to David talking about the internship, only because my job knew about my past. They allowed me to do my internship there. I applied many places to do my internship for my drug and alcohol counseling, but I was like denied because you have to do a background check. But my job was so adamant about getting me certified as a drug counselor, they allowed me to do my internship there. But the people that come in Suburban Beyond Recovery Center every day, this is their story. I can't get a job because either I got a felony or either I have to register every week and there's nothing else to do. That's why I get high, because I have nowhere to go. I either can go to somebody's house for a day and give them $20 and get high. And that's how the addiction spirals down, because we are not allowed to become normal citizens. I am such an advocate for the people. I am a revolutionary. I believe, like everybody else on this panel, believes that we are humans. We are somebody, and we are productive members of society. I mean, we've been accountable. We did what we had to do, and we want to live just like everybody else. I can hear my grandkids saying, "Why you can't be here? Where you going? When you coming back?" So I try to make it to visit them every day and to see my wife and, look for housing that I would be able to go to soon, hopefully soon. But yeah, that's what happens in recovery. People feel like there's no help and there's nobody's doing nothing. They can't find housing or they can't find a job because, as David said, people want to know about your background. They want to know, have you ever been locked up? Even if you've been locked up 30 years ago and you did what you had to do, that you still can't get something because something is over your head. Yeah, so yeah.
Great, thank you for that. I want to go into the Q&A right now. This question is for our friends at the Chicago 400 Alliance. Just a second. So this person would like to know about the Chicago 400 Alliance's attempts to change the laws in Illinois. Specifically, they want to know, what are you proposing to change and how are you building that support? Are you reaching out to other activists? Story out mainstream media, social media? Basically, this person wants to know if there's a media strategy for the legislative campaign. Chicago 400 folks, that question.
Oh, so hello, my name is... Go ahead, Terrence.
Yes, one is we do have a bill that we had in place. I'm grateful and honored to say that we had a bill in the House. Unfortunately, it didn't go through the House. In the bill, it states that we want to end weekly registration. That way we won't have to register once a week. That way we can be able to have a normal stable job. And two,
so Terrence, I will take over for me. I'll take over. And so what Terrence is saying, that we had a bill, it was called HB 3913, which we went asking the state legislature, the state legislature to pass a bill that would cut the housing budget down to 250 feet so more housing can open up. And we wanted to take the weekly thing down to at least yearly. And again, I think somebody said we got to do 10 years. So if you miss your registry that week, for the week, if you miss the registry and you got 10 years, the state of Illinois will add 10 more years to that. So every time you fail to register weekly, they will add 10 more years to your years. So that's the study adding years to you if you miss registries. So you just get to go in 1 week and something happened, you're in the hospital and you're not allowed to get there. That means the state of Illinois can add 10 more years, but we do have a bill. And we also have tons and tons of meetings with our legislators and our senators and our representatives, and we're trying to educate them on what we're asking for and what we need to become human beings and productive citizens in the world.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Anything else to add, Terrence, on that?
I would just ask, like Stephen said, as far as legally, I think that's one of the main things that need to be discussed more, because, like I said, it's a hindrance and it's undoable. The fact that we are faced to be stuck for an hour or two at the station just to sign a piece of paper, which they don't do nothing but put it in a shredder. So it's just like a waste of time getting up at 6, 5, whatever the case may be, to sit inside a police station from 9 to however it takes just to sign a piece of paper. So we definitely want to end weekly registration. And we can talk about that in another Zoom meeting. But that's like mainly one of the reasons why we're here is to end weekly registration. That way we can have housing and, like Stephen said, to be able to have a job. Because like it's one thing to have a family, but then it's another thing not to support a family.
Thank you for that.
Can I add one thing to that? I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
This is to both Terrence and Stephen's point, but also to the question about data and data-driven, information. It's really important to reiterate that these laws are discredited laws. They're indiscriminate, sweeping, discredited laws. You don't need data to know that you don't need a law that does nothing to help anyone, not evidence-based. And I mean, a real premise of our campaign is leave people alone, let them succeed. These folks are doing amazing work. They help others. Like our people who experience homelessness, like go distribute food to homeless people. Terrence helps people all the time. Stephen, like literally 9 to 5 is, helping every single person. They don't, all we do is knock them down over and over. You want to get an education? Well, no, you want to, Terrence and Stephen have housing they could live in. And we are saying, no, you can't live in it. We're making people register weekly. So I just want to emphasize, like, we don't need the government's help here. Just leave us alone. Let people live their lives. For people who do need supportive housing, I mean, there's certainly people who have that need, but it's really not unique to people in registries. If people have needs, take care of those needs. But other than that, stop. So our law, our bill is really just asking legislators to stop damaging people so acutely.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lori Jo. And I think that this next question from a visitor or viewer kind of piggybacks on what you just said. They asked, do any of you believe that registries do a disservice to public safety, and why?
I think we all agree they do a disservice to public safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I say yes too. And it's a waste of time because, like I said, it don't do us no justice. And I always use this analogy. If Jesus Christ could die for our sins, then why the world and the society cannot give a person who committed a crime and did their time, why can they have a second chance? And if we say Black Lives Matter, then how is it that myself and Stephen going through this situation for a matter of time, and like people say they want to help, but then when we tell them, well, this is what I'm faced with, or this is what I'm looking at, we need help dealing with this. It's easy for people to say they want to help, but when they look at the story on the background, they treat us like we don't matter. And sometimes it becomes like a racist thing and also a political thing. And I don't want nobody looking at me any different than what my name on my birth certificate says. My name says Terrence. It doesn't say as SO or Predator. So what I'm trying to say is, it's just time for people to like really look at this thing and say, hey, these people suffered enough. It's time for us to step up or shut up. Like, because they need the help. We put the time in, work in, so we just looking for a change. And that's all I can say about that.
Thanks for that. Appreciate that. There was another question in here that I wanted to answer or ask rather, but I can't see it. So here's another one that's directed at David. David, this question's for you. The visitor wonders how you reconcile your opposition to the registry in light of your lived experience. Can you unpack that for the visitor?
Yeah, it's definitely a wonderful question, and I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I don't wish I could go back and take the act away from taking this man's life, But one thing I realized, in the work that I do to work to abolish the registry, there's two main things I do it. One is I'm a client of Brian Stevenson, and he always says, you're not as bad as the worst thing you've ever done. And then also my faith, that talks about grace and forgiveness. And how can I ask God to forgive me and to show me grace, and I don't show the next man the same type of grace, no matter what they've done in the past, And that's how I look at it. I mean, was my job difficult working with men who committed sexual offenses? Yes, because they would sit there and they would tell me the offense that they committed. But I wouldn't look at them as the offense. I would look at them as a man, and realize that, okay, this act that you committed was 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I wasn't going to define them by that, And so really the work that I do is from that place of grace, from that place of looking at somebody not as the past, but as who they are today, and being able to pour into them and see them thrive and become everybody that reach their potential. And that's really what it's about. I always want to see people reach their potential and be the person God created them to be.
Willie, I see your hand raised. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back and I see that the gentleman mentioned that he actually obtained his counseling degree. So it's really unique because I actually applied for the same degree in New York State and was denied. So I went through the whole rigorous process. I had the caseworkers, I had the counseling, I had the high aptitude in terms of the actual coursework. And when it came to the Board of Ethics review, the answer was that I was unethical, that I did not pass the ethics review standard to be a counselor, which is really kind of dismissive of the fact that inside of the Department of Corrections, I was actually the one who facilitated the anger management and the various programs that was acknowledged by the parole board to enable an individual to return back to society. But now once in society, I don't meet the criteria to be able to do the same exact job. So it's definitely a double standard. And I definitely like to commend the individuals who did in the Chicago 400 who did and who are successful in actually obtaining their KSACs or their substance abuse degrees.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Willie. Two things I want to do with the limited time that we have left. I want to ask everybody on the panel what one thing is that the public must know about registries. And then I'm going to hand it over to Lori Jo to show some art. So I'm just going to go in the order that folks are on my screen. David, would you mind sharing with the group one thing you think the public must know about registries?
That it costs too much money. We need to spend that money on prevention and education.
Thanks for that. Lori Jo, you're next on my screen.
I'm sorry. Registries are a form of adversarial policing. All a registry is a mandate that a person return to a police station every week, every month, every year for the rest of their lives for 10 years to have a negative experience that does nothing for anybody. So if you're concerned about how we're using our police and law enforcement resources, you should definitely be opposed to registries.
Thank you for that. Emily, you're next on my screen.
There's no research or data that exist that show registries make anyone safer. And in fact, they make us less safe because they ruin lives and they are just destructive, useless, stupid policies.
Thank you. Stephen, you're next on my screen. What does everybody need to know about registries?
I think the registry is a political gimmick. If you vote for me, I make sure that your neighborhood is safe. It is a political gimmick, and I'm just gonna go with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Terrence, what's one thing the public needs to know about registries?
It's unlawful and it's unjustified, especially now dealing with this COVID. And that we have to go register under the police. And now that people getting vaccinated, some people wearing masks and some not. But so it's still here. And like I said, it's unjustified and it's a waste of time.
Thanks for that, Terrence, and thank you for bringing COVID into that. Willie, what's one thing that the public must know about registries?
That is predominantly based on speculation and is devoid of scientific or factual content based on research.
Thanks for that, Willie. Lori Jo, did you want to show some art to end our program?
Sure, thank you so much. This is Clifford, who one day was writing out the laws, and he had this insight that, there we go, that they, the Chicago 400, are the ones who carry out the laws. And so they did this incredible 7-foot drawing describing what it really means to carry out the laws. And that ended up, that and other drawings and maps ended up being shown at the Drawing Center, which is, and I'm just going to flip through a couple of these. You can get in touch with us if you want to see more, but people in the Chicago 400 mapped out their experiences with the registry laws and with housing banishment laws. And through this experience, we were able to recognize what was happening, articulate what was happening, be very moved by it, be able to recognize that this was moving people to and from police stations, and also bring people in. And the thing that is the essence of this and the spirit of this panel is you have to listen to the people who carry out the laws, or you will not understand the laws. And you should never support a law that you don't understand or that you don't know and you haven't heard from somebody who has to experience that law.
Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing this art with us. That's our time. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us. Thanks to our CEO, Sally Elk, and for our Director of Marketing, Nicole, for helping out on the back end. And thanks to all the viewers for tuning in. We'll see you next month on Searchlight. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so